What's up, YouTube? It's your Lord and Savior King D353 here, and I'd like to welcome you to my study. As you lovely people may have known, as you are all part of the gaming community, recently the Pokemon Company and Game Freak had a bit of a leak. They have leaked multiple documents, including but not limited to plans for future games, betas of old games, and stories of the Pokemon's old lore. Now, we are not here to go over all of the leaks per se. Rather, we are here to go for a specific portion of the leaks. Part of the leaks were some folklore stories. Old stories of Pokemon's past that presumably were meant to be added to the games but were not added. Let's make that clear right now. The stories are not canon. They were originally planned, but never came to be. Anyway, seeing these stories, I found them quite intriguing. Thought maybe I could read them for all of you lovely people. And as you decided on Twitter, you wanted me to read all of the stories in one big video. So I have compiled all the stories I could find to be read off today for all of you. I hope you enjoy it. I will do my best to be the greatest narrator for all of you. If I've missed a story, do let me know, and I will make a part 2 to get that story. As of right now, though, let us begin. First off, we have the story of the original sin. All of these stories are titled to some extent. They are technically less titles and more so descriptions of what the story is about. I don't know if these were on the original document. I have a slightly altered thing. I have a white sheet with notes on it. From what I've noted, the original documents seem to have been black screens that are hard to read. So I don't think what I have is the original, but rather just an easier to read thing of it. So these could be the official names that they had in the documents, or they could be what the translator renamed them to during their translations. In the top right here, you will see the title, and in the bottom you will see the Pokemon that the story has to do with. In the case of the original sin, it has to do with the Slackoth and Slack King line. Anyway, let's begin. In the distant past, when the boundary between Pokemon and humans was still blurred, there was a woman and her companions. Every day they were bored, so they would often catch Slackoth living in the nearby forest. They played cruel games with the captured Slackoth, sometimes killing them for fun, gouging out their eyes, or cutting off their ears. One day, the woman was walking alone in the forest, and saw a Slackoth hanging from a tree. She climbed the tree to catch it, but slipped and injured herself. At that moment, a Vigoroth appeared. This Vigoroth had a torn ear. The woman, startled, tried to flee, but her injured leg hurt too much, and she couldn't move. The Vigoroth with the torn ear suddenly attacked her when it saw her. The woman lost consciousness. I actually should have said this earlier in the video, but a trigger warning for anyone sensitive to more salacious topics. Since these are based on old folklore, less than happy things happen in some of these stories. I apologize for not saying so at the beginning. This is your chance to change the video now if you so choose. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay then, let us continue. When she awoke, she was in an unfamiliar place. Before her lay a clear lake, surrounded by trees, from which many Slackoth and Vigoroth were hanging. All the Pokemon bore wounds somewhere on their bodies, marks left by the woman and her companions. Upon closer inspection, she noticed that some of the Slackoth hanging from the trees were corpses. They were the very Slackoth that the woman and her friends had killed and discarded. The Slackoth were throwing these corpses into the lake. Terrified, the woman tried to run away, but a Slacking appeared. The Slacking also had a torn ear. The woman realized that this was the very Vigoroth she had seen earlier, and fear overwhelmed her, causing her to faint once more. When the woman regained consciousness, she found herself at the entrance of the forest, near her home, surrounded by her friends. They carried her back to her house. Some time later, the woman gave birth to a child, but it wasn't a human child. It was a Slackoth. She intended to abandon it, but couldn't bring herself to do so. She stopped meeting with her friends and decided to raise the Slackoth. One day, her friends, concerned about her, visited the area near her home. They found the Slackoth sleeping there, the child of the woman. As they always did, they caught the Slackoth, stabbed it in the chest, and killed it. They took its corpse and headed to the woman's house. When she saw the slain Slackoth, the woman was overwhelmed with sorrow. She grabbed the Slackoth's body and ran deep into the forest. Her friends, shocked, chased after her. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the surroundings suddenly opened up, and they found the same clear lake from before. Around the lake were very Slackoth and Vigoroth. The woman stood before the lake, and holding the lifeless body of the Slackoth, she threw herself into the water. Afterwards, the woman's friends began to treat Slackoth as companions, just as she had her in her final moments. A story that many people would dislike nowadays due to the mention of that topic, but a folklore about treating others as you wish to be treated and not being cruel to others. A fine tale, even if against our modern-day sensibilities, don't you think? Onward to our next story. Before we begin this tale, I should notify you guys of something. I'm sure when finding these stories, you guys have noticed the memes of Pokemon being spread around. Every story has the one Pokemon that everyone remembers for it, and makes jokes about how they can never see that Pokemon the same way again. Because of this, a lot of us, myself included, see it as the blank Pokemon story, attributing the story to one specific Pokemon. I need to bring up this topic because some stories are not attributed to a singular Pokemon. In some stories, multiple Pokemon appear. As you can see here with the collapse of culture and relationships, our Pokemon that represents the story is a Ursaluna. Technically it's an Ursarang, but you'll understand why I chose Ursaluna once I actually read the story. However, the story also includes an Octillery, and arguably a Lapras. You see, the story has two Pokemon that are the focus of it. The Pokemon we find first in the water, and then the Ursarang that we find later in the forest. In the water scene, there is an Octillery in this tale. However, the Lapras tale seems to word for word be the Octillery portion of this tale. So, you will not see a story with Octillery or Lapras in the bottom right hand corner there, as Octillery and Lapras are both linked to the Ursarang tale. Are we in understanding? Good. I'm sorry for talking too much, it's a problem of mine. Let's begin with the story, shall we? There was a time when the boundary between Pokemon and humans was blurred. In a coastal village, there was a man. One day, as he was walking along the shore, he found a female Pokemon washed up on the beach. The man had relations with the Pokemon, and then threw it back into the sea. The next day, he went to the same spot and found the same Pokemon again. He once more had relations with it, then threw it back into the sea as before. One night, after several days had passed, the man had a dream. In that dream, the Pokemon spoke to him. I cannot come to you, but I will deliver our child to you. It is our child, yours and mine. Some say this Pokemon was an Octillery, others a Lapras. It's unsure to know. Either way, the next morning, the man went to the place where he had met the Pokemon. There he found a boy. The man took this boy home and raised him. Time passed. The boy grew into a young man, and the father passed away. The young man was always lonely. One day, as the young man walked along the shore, he saw a group of people playing in the distance. They all held very large swords in their hands. As they danced, the young man approached the people, and as he got closer, he saw that Sharpedo were playing along the beach. When he tried to get closer, the Sharpedo suddenly leapt into the sea all at once. However, one of the Sharpedo lingered, looking around the tree, looking around 3 times before swimming away. At the spot where the Sharpedo had been playing, there was a large sword laying on the ground. It was a shape he had never seen before, and it was very sharp and pointed. The young man took the sword home. The next day, the young man took the sword and went into the forest. While walking through the forest, he encountered an Ursarang. He tried slashing at the Ursarang's mouth with the sword, and the mouth was easily severed. Next, he stabbed the Ursarang's eyes, and they were easily pierced. Finally, the young man thrust the sword into the Ursarang's chest, and the Ursarang died effortlessly. That day, the young man killed 30 Ursarang. After that, he always carried the sword with him, playing by injuring Pokemon he encountered or cutting off parts of their body. One autumn, while the young man was searching for firewood, he lost his way. After walking for a while, he stumbled upon an Ursarang's den. Inside, there was an elderly Ursarang lying down. The elderly Ursarang looked at the young man and said, "Come inside." The young man hesitated, but as it was getting dark outside, he entered the den. Before long, people began to enter the den, one after another, filling the room completely. Looking close, he saw that all the people had scarred faces, and some were missing their eyes. They were chatting amongst themselves, but the young man ignored them and fell asleep. At one point he woke up to find the elderly Ursarang laying beside him. He fell asleep again. When he awoke once more, there were many people around talking about something. Again, the young man ignored them and went back to sleep. When spring arrived, the elderly Ursarang spoke. "Do you want to go home? Then I shall send you home. When you return, a Wailord will soon be found near the village. Go there. We will send a man. You must leave the sword behind and bring a witness. Why did you do such things? Cutting faces and slicing off noses." The elderly Ursarang escorted the young man back to the village. Upon his return, the young man recounted everything he had happened to the villagers. The following morning, the young man took some villagers with him and headed to the shore. As they walked along the coast, they found a large Wailord nearby. On the beach was a Teddiursa. When it noticed the young man, the Teddiursa hid in the forest, and a large Ursarang came out in its place. As the Ursarang charged at him, the young man tried to draw the sword he had hidden, but it got stuck, and he could not pull it out. So he rushed at the Ursarang with his bare hands. The young man and the Ursarang grappled, punching each other's faces. They strangled each other with all their might, and so they choked each other out to death, collapsing on top of one another. The villagers went back and told the others what they had seen. So we have an interesting story here. It's apparently the collapse of culture. I don't really see where the cultures collapsed. All we saw was a young boy who could not handle his urges and did unspeakable things for the sake of fun. The Ursarang culture seemed to stay perfectly well, as did the human culture as they allowed him to face the punishment for his crimes. Perhaps I'm just not intelligent enough to understand the title of this particular piece. But the lesson is clear. Don't be cruel to others for your own entertainment, lest they be cruel to you in return. On to the next piece. I believe this is the most popular one going right now, the Typhlosion story. I've definitely seen my fair share of memes about it. Our theme/title this time, the relationship between humans and Pokemon, and human-like ways of thinking. Long ago, when the boundary between Pokemon and humans was unclear, there was a village somewhere. One day, a girl from that village went into the mountain to gather firewood. She found well-dried firewood deep in the forest, so she kept going deeper in. Before she realized it, the sun was setting, and she had lost her way. Around her there were droppings from a Typhlosion, which made the girl anxious. Just then, a man appeared from the other side of the forest. His face didn't resemble anyone from the village, but he was very handsome. The man said, "You must be lost, right? I know the way down the mountain, but with your pace, it would be midnight before we get there. I'll take you back tomorrow morning. Why don't you rest at my place tonight?" The girl had no choice but to agree to the man's suggestion. The man took her hand and began to walk. As evening fell, they arrived at a large cave. "This is my home. You must be hungry, right? Wait here." Saying that, the man went outside the cave. After he left, a red light shone from far away in the mountains, and there was the sound of trees swaying. Before long, the man returned, carrying many red berries. He said, "Eat this, then let's sleep for the night. Even if you wake up before I do, do not look at my face." The next morning, when the girl woke up, the man was still asleep. She honored their promise and stayed lying down, waiting. Before long, she fell back to sleep. She was awakened by the man's voice. When she looked outside, the sun was already setting. "Today we will eat green berries. Wait here." With that, he went out of the cave. After he left, the same red light shone from far away, and the sound of trees swaying echoed once more. By the time the sun had set completely, the man returned. Carrying many green berries, he said, "Eat this, then let's sleep for the night. Even if you wake up before I do, don't look at my face." The girl expressed her concern that her family would be worried, and that she wanted to go home. Soon, the man yawned widely and tapped her on the head. At that moment, she completely forgot about her family and home. The two of them ate the green berries together, and then fell asleep. The same routine continued with them waking up when the sun had set, the man going out to gather berries, and the two of them eating and sleeping together. Eventually, the girl realized that the man was a Typhlosion. As winter approached, the Typhlosion dug deeper into the cave and said to the girl, "Go and gather firewood. For firewood, break off the branches from the higher parts of the tall trees." The girl tried to do as the Typhlosion instructed, but the tall trees scared her, so she could only climb the shorter ones. When she brought back some branches, the Typhlosion said, "That won't do. If it's not from the higher branches, the humans will find us." When the snow began to fall, the two of them lived in the depths of the cave, mostly sleeping. There was plenty of food. Occasionally they would wake up, eat, and then go back to sleep. One day, when she awoke, the girl was holding a child. After several days and nights had passed, the Typhlosion said, "Your father is looking for you, but you are my wife, so I can't return you. I will have to fight him." The girl pleaded, "Please, don't do that. Don't kill my father. How can I live with you if you kill my family? You are a good person, so please, stay here with me and sleep." Alright, let's stay here and sleep. The man nodded. The next night, the Typhlosion woke the girl and said, "Your father is close. Go and see." When the girl went outside, a snowstorm was raging. She climbed the low tree and broke off a branch. When she returned to the cave, the Typhlosion was singing a song she had never heard before. "You broke off a branch, didn't you? Soon your father will come here. I'm going to do something bad to your father. If I am killed, take my eyes, my voice, and my heart. Build a fire at the spot where I was killed, and burn them. And while they burn, sing this song until the fire goes out." The girl said, "Please don't do it. Don't kill my father. If anyone is to be killed, let it be you. Goodbye. We'll never meet again." With those words, the Typhlosion went outside. After a while, there was a loud noise, and when the girl looked outside, she saw her father had killed the Typhlosion. She rushed out and said to her father, "Father, you have killed my husband. I have been living with him all this time. He was my husband. Please give me my husband, the Typhlosion's eyes, voice, and heart." The girl built a fire at the place where the Typhlosion had been killed, and put his eyes, voice, and heart into the flames. She sang the song the Typhlosion had taught her, until the fire burned out. The girl's father built a small hut on the edge of the village for the girl and her child to live in. Eventually, spring arrived. The young men of the village often teased and tormented the girl and her child. It became worse over time, and one day they tried to drape a Typhlosion's pelt over them. The girl returned home and pleaded with her parents. "Please, tell the villagers to stop teasing us. If they put that pelt on us, we will surely become Typhlosion. We're already half Typhlosion as it is." Despite the parents' pleas, the villagers did not listen. In fact, they found it even more amusing, and eventually draped the Typhlosion pelt over the girl and her child. At that moment, they howled loudly and vanished into the depths of the forest. The two were never seen again. And so people came to understand Typhlosion are half human beings. I'm not quite sure how that ending matches up to the title of the story, but still interesting lore, don't you think? Also, I do apologize for the moments where I pause in the middle of the stories. I'm not trying to be difficult, but as I read through these stories, due to my bad vision, I have to zoom in on them and slowly scroll through the stories. Sometimes, due to how the pictures on my phone works, as I scroll through the stories, I will accidentally go over to another picture entirely, losing the story and having to refine my path. I do apologize for not being the perfect storyteller, and I do hope you can forgive me for those brief pauses. Anyway, let's move on to our next tale, shall we? I never did explain why I chose the picture of Ursaluna for the Ursarang story, did I? I chose the picture of Ursaluna due to the fact that the boy falls to a wounded Ursarang that presumably he himself had hurt. I figured the picture of the wounded Ursaluna would do a much better job of giving the story than a regular Ursarang, but also because there is another Ursarang story to be told. This Ursarang story did not have a title nor a descriptor, so I actually named this one. Hopefully Pride vs. Need is a acceptable enough title. There was a forest running at the foothills of a mountain, and at its base lived two brothers. They survived by gathering berries and hunting Ursarang. The berries only ripened during the short summer, and in the winter they withered and were covered by deep snow. During the summer, Ursarang were small and weak Teddy Ursa, but in the winter they grew into large, powerful Ursarang. Eating Ursarang meat granted great strength, and their warm fur could ward off even the harshest of cold when worn. The older brother was a master hunter, so he brought home prey every day, both in summer and in winter. The younger brother, not skilled in hunting, mostly brought home berries. One hot summer day, the young brother returned to the forest. There, he saw a beautiful Ursarang. Its rich fur glistened in the sunlight. As the young brother hurriedly aimed his bow, the Ursarang spoke. "Why do you need my fur on a day where the sun shines so brightly? Why do you need my meat when there are so many berries around here? Your brother has killed my family, and now I am the only female left in the forest. If I die, it will disappear forever." The younger brother lowered his bow and said, "Then I will not kill you. But I want to be near your beautiful fur. Please, stay with me." The Ursarang became the younger brother's wife. Together, they gathered berries throughout the forest. The Ursarang showed the younger brother where to find berries that people do not know about. In return, the younger brother told the Ursarang when his brother would go out hunting. Throughout the summer, the brother did not eat the meat of Teddy Ursa or Ursarang. When winter came, the Ursarang appeared before the younger brother, accompanied by a male. The Ursarang said, "They have already given me children, so use them to sustain your lives." The younger brother killed the male Ursarang, skinned it, and cut up the meat. He buried the remains in the soil along with the seeds. When the young brother and the Ursarang offered their prayers of gratitude, the snow parted and small saplings emerged. Thanks to the prey the younger brother brought home, the brothers did not freeze or starve. However, the older brother was not pleased that only the younger brother always brought home meat. One snowy night, the older brother went out hunting. Deep in the forest at the foot of the mountain, an Ursarang was pushing through the snow, searching for food. It was the younger brother's wife, the Ursarang. Her rich fur glowed faintly under the moonlight, making her appear strikingly large. As the older brother raised his bow, the Ursarang spoke. "You do not starve because of the meat your younger brother brings. You do not freeze because of the fur your younger brother brings." But the older brother paid no heed and shot the arrow. The older brother returned home with his catch. When the younger brother saw the beautiful fur and meat his older brother had brought back, he rushed outside. Startled, the older brother chased after him, and there the younger brother stood before the carcass of the slain Ursarang. The beautiful fur was stripped away, and the meat had been taken, leaving only the eyes, the heart, and the voice. The younger brother gathered these remnants and disappeared deep into the forest. The older brother called out to him in a loud voice, over and over again, but the younger brother never returned. As you see, I named this story Pride versus Need because I felt that was what the story was trying to teach us about, as the younger brother respected nature and tried not to kill needlessly, and yet the older brother ruined their situation by having his pride harmed and killing the younger brother's wife as a result. Sadly, I'm not as good at naming things as the other wonderful people who've named stories here, be they official people or translators, but hopefully it did the job nonetheless. Tell me, which Ursarang story did you prefer? Did you prefer the man that fought the Ursarang for fun and came to a startling punishment? Or did you enjoy this tale of a love ruined by a brother's foolish pride? Let's move on to the next tale. This story will have some similarities to the story of Ursarang, but I assure you it is a different tale. Although I suppose this has to do with the fact that these are in fact cancelled stories. Perhaps the Ursarang was version 1 and this story was version 2. Probably more likely that this was version 1 and Ursarang was version 2, as you'll find something happens in the story that you would never really see in Pokemon. Then again, I guess it's the case for all of these tales, isn't it? Okay, apologies for talking too much. Let's get into the story, shall we? Theme: Humans hunting Pokemon, and Native American ecology philosophy. In the past, when the boundary between humans and Pokemon was blurred, there was a grassy plain with a large lake at the foot of a mountain. 2 men lived on the west and east sides of the lake. The 2 men lived by hunting Pokemon. The man living in the west was not particularly skilled, but he strictly followed the hunting rules. The man living in the east was a skilled hunter, but often neglected these rules. One day, the man from the west went out on a hunt and saw a Rapadash on the plain. Its lush mane shone beautifully in the sunlight. As the man from the west raised his bow, the Rapadash spoke. "We have children now. If I die, there will be none more of us left in this plain." The man from the west lowered his bow and said, "Then I will not kill you. However, I desire your beautiful mane, so I ask you to become my wife." The Rapadash became the wife of the man from the west. After about 2 months, when Ponyta began to appear in the plains, the man from the west was riding the back of his wife, the Rapadash, running across the plain. Eventually, they reached a place where many Rapadash and Ponyta were resting. The wife said, "They are my husbands. If you need, you may hunt them. If you treat them with care, they will not die. However, do not kill the female Rapadash or the Ponyta. The female Rapadash are my sisters, and the Ponyta are my children. That means the female Rapadash are your sisters-in-law, and the Ponyta are your children." A few days later, the man from the east went out hunting. When he reached the plains, he found a Ponyta. He immediately shot an arrow and killed it. As he continued looking for more prey, he encountered a Rapadash. It was a female Rapadash. The Rapadash tried to say something, but the man from the east ignored it and shot an arrow. He then cut off the mane of the Rapadash he had killed, and, proud of the beautiful mane, decided to show it off to the man from the west. He wrapped the mane around his head and headed home. Eventually tired of walking, the man from the east decided to rest under a large tree by the lake. As the man from the west and his wife, the Rapadash, walked along the lake shore, they saw a glimpse of a Rapidash's mane under the shadow of a big tree. "He is male. He has no children, so if you need, you may hunt him," said the wife. With that, the man shot an arrow at the Rapadash. When he approached the prey, he found the man from the east laying there, wrapped in the Rapidash's mane. "Take this mane back with you, and when you hunt Rapadash, follow the rules I have told you." With those words, the Rapadash said farewell to the men from the west and returned to the plains. I know I'm trying to give off the air of an intelligent and well-spoken storyteller, but I must return back to my foolish ways and ask a question of this story. I noticed that apparently, when hunting the men, if you treat them well, they don't die. I am not quite sure how that works. It also does slightly bother me that these stories are fine hunting men, but not so fine hunting women. I get the logic, of course. The women reproduce and create more mares, thus allowing them to get more in the long run. However, as a male myself, I still can't help but feel a little bad seeing stories where our lives are a little bit less important. It is logical, though. I apologize for my foolishness. Let's ignore me and return to the actual tales, shall we? Did you guys enjoy the Rapadash tale? We have a final story to tell, and in this case, I do not know if the Pokemon I have here in the bottom right corner is correct. For you see, this tale is rather vague. The names stated are not names of actual Pokemon. As such, we can only infer what the Pokemon are. Based on the tale, I have inferred that the Pokemon in question are the Creation Quartet, as you see down there. But you tell me once I read the tale. Also, I do apologize if I mispronounce any of the names in this tale. As I am not literate in other languages, I do not know the pronunciation of alternate letterings, so I apologize. Anyway, let us begin. I named the story myself, as the story does not have a name. That is part of its vagueness. In a time when the world had no clear form, when the boundaries between gods, humans, and Pokemon were ambiguous, the absolute god, Os, created a giant, a manifestation of his chaotic power, for the ultimate creation of the world. This giant had the power to destroy, consume, and purify everything. With the giant's power, all walls were shattered, and the world expanded. There was a man. One day, a wounded woman collapsed in the land where he lived. The man took her home and cared for her tenderly. Eventually, they fell in love, and when all her wounds had healed, the woman became pregnant with their child. After a while, she gave birth to twins. Then, the woman transformed into a divine figure and began to speak. I am the god known as Os. I once lived in a place different from here. However, I was driven here by my own manifestation, the giant. Since the giant is part of me, I cannot kill it. The giant will destroy and consume everything, and it will eventually descend upon this world. Until that day comes, I hope you will raise these children with care. Only those children who possess the powers of a god, human, and Pokemon can kill that giant. After finishing her tale, Os vanished before the man. The man named his twins after the two words he felt when he saw Os's true form. Ea, meaning light, and Ea, meaning time. So as you can see, I went under the assumption this was Palkia and Dialga, due to the fact that Os is clearly meant to be Arceus. As such, I can only assume that Ea is Dialga, and Aya is Palkia, as time matches up with Dialga. I do not quite know how light matches up with space, but it's entirely possible that light matches up with space because space is the existing world, and light reveals that which exists. Of course, that would make the giant Giratina. This could work because antimatter, when in combination with matter, destroys it, thus destroying, consuming, and purifying, turning the tainted matter into pure non-existence. Of course, I could be wrong. Perhaps a story about other creatures entirely. For now, I can only assume. I do hope you enjoyed the story time with me. I know it wasn't perfect due to my pauses and occasional verbal stutterings. I would do this over again to make it perfect, but sadly I am not a patient man. Rereading all of these tales in succession over and over again until I get the perfect read, it would drive me wild. Cutting out parts of the video and making the music skip would also drive me wild, as while the background music is no orchestra, it is still an imperative part of this video, and I'd prefer not to hear it jumping around. If you find this unbearable and are unhappy with this video, I deeply apologize. I truly did try my best to be a good narrator for all of you. Hopefully, despite my flaws and imperfections, you still found joy in this video today. That aside, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you all. If you enjoyed and feel I deserve it, you can donate to me at buymeacoffee.com/KingD353. With every donation, with every $1 donation per month, you will be allowed to get shoutouts at the end of these videos. Give more than $1 a month, and you'll get bonuses within my Discord. Speaking of my Discord, if you'd like to join it, you can find its link in the description down below. Once you're there, we can chat, play video games, share memes, and have ourselves a grand old time. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see all you beautiful people later. Tell me if you like the stories in the description. Tell me if you like the stories in the comment section down below, and if you'd like me to read to you some more. Maybe I'll do stories. Maybe I'll do some boyfriend audios. I remember my old worker Tetronimo said I'd be rather good at them. I suppose we can find out in the future. If you guys show interest, of course. Deuces, Kingdom.